Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports Podcast, the college offseason podcast where you could say we're less of the regular season, but wait. Nope, I'm not going to finish it because this is Matt's day. This is Matt's day on the podcast because his Indiana Hoosiers are officially the 2026 college football national champs. Matt, congratulations. I know you've got plenty to say about this historic moment in college football, so take it away, my friend.
I do, and I'm gonna start, I guess, with like the big dramatic monologue I've been working on, which is the week before, just after the Peach Bowl, when you and Ryan were doing a show, and I had to cancel at the last minute because I had something come up, and we had to move the date. I was gonna make a comment, and you guys would, in retrospect, would have absolutely reamed me for it, where I was gonna talk about how weird this all felt because in a way, this Indiana run for the longest time, it kind of felt hollow. I'm not going to lie to me. And the reason why is because, I didn't grow up watching Indiana football. I watched the Colts, I watched the Reds, I watched Indiana basketball, men's and women's, to be honest. But Indiana football was kind of just like a thing that existed that you checked in on every Saturday, and they were down 34 to nothing, and then you went back to the real game of the week. And that's just how it was. I mean, I've been to sporting events for those other teams. I've professional in college. I've probably been to more like Hanover like football games than I have IU football games. And so to me, it was kind of like, wow, this feels hollow in a way because I feel like I'm a bandwagoner. I feel like I'm not doing anything correctly here. It just feels kind of weird because it didn't have the same satisfaction at first that like a Colts Super Bowl or a Reds World Series or even a men's basketball championship would have. And as I'm going through the game, the motions, feeling the excitement like build inside me, thinking about last year, everyone calling it a fluke, everyone doing this, that, and the other thing, the Notre Dame game, the Ohio State game, the weird feelings with that. And then I'm thinking about everything else. In my life, I didn't get to watch when the Colts won in 2007. I was a little bit younger. I had to go to school the next day, and I really wasn't into sports. And after that, I started to watch sports more because everyone thought Peyton Manning was cool, and I thought he was too. And then I started watching more. And then 2009 happens, and the Tracy Porter interception, ironically, an Indiana guy, occurs. I get more into baseball, and of course, the Reds blow that 2-0 series lead to the Dodgers. They get no, or Dodgers Giants. They get no hit by Roy Halladay. Indiana, the Colts, Andrew Luck retires. They have the most epic playoff comeback of all time and get dog walked by New England in the championship game. There were moments, there'll always be the watch shot. There will always be that wild card comeback against the Chiefs. There will always be like those Pacers, like near Eastern Conference, near NBA Finals runs when LeBron ran the East in Cleveland. There will always be like moments that felt like they were going to lead to something bigger. But for everything like that, I can think of, our idiot kicker, that happened before I was watching sports. There will be moments like Tyrese Halliburton in Game 7. There were moments like Daniel Jones and his Achilles this year. Gardner Minshew's like attempt to win the AFC South to Tyler Goodson a couple years ago. Everything always seemed to end up in the same place, which was close, but no cigar. And Indiana football was something that didn't even have a cigar. They were just sitting outside on the park bench watching the birds or something. And now I'm watching this game and it's like, oh my God, they could do it. And then during the last drive, they're playing prevent defense, obviously. They're up 6. And I'm thinking every Gus Bradley, every Lou Anarumo, every you name it, Colts defensive coordinator the last umpteen years of my life. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to blow this. This is where it happens. And I realized it really wasn't like hollowness. It was more like the expectation that something horrible was about to happen more than feeling hollow. I'm just waiting and waiting for that fatal mistake, for somebody to get hurt, for someone to fall down comically, and Miami walks it off. And it doesn't happen. The exact opposite happens. And the minute Farrell catches that ball, I just feel, or I'm sorry, it wasn't Farrell. I'm Sharp intercepts that ball. I'm just feeling like all that weird anxiety about every sporting event in my life just kind of melt away because it's really the first time I've seen a team that I tangentially like from a school that I like actually win a championship. And it's euphoric and it feels weird because it's like the one thing I never expected to happen is the one thing that delivers the first championship that I've been able to watch with my own eyes. And that feeling, that euphoria, that what do I even do with my hands right now if I'm quoting Talladega Nights? It just ripples through the whole week because it's like bizarre that I live in a world where Indiana football is not only good like last year, which was weird enough, but is a national championship caliber team who has expectations and a coach. And I'm thinking in further retrospect, it doesn't matter. They might never sniff the championship again. They could go back to back. They could take a year off and win it next year. Josh Hoover could break Fernando Mendoza's passing touchdown record next year. Uh, Turbo Richard could come in and make everyone think Kalon Black looked like he was playing in the 1940s. Nick Marsh could make Elijah Surratt look like Denny's instead of Waffle House. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they win 5 championships, 1 championship, etc. The first time it happens is always going to be like the most memorable thing you can experience because it's the first time. You've never experienced it before. These guys will always be special. They will always be players you tell your kids, grandkids, random ass guys on the street about because they were the first to do it. And all those feelings of hollowness, all those feelings of whatever just washed away when I think this is the first time they've done this. This is the only team that will be able to say that. This is like Heraclitus when he says you never step in the same river twice. There will never be another team exactly like the 2025 Indiana Hoosier 2025-2026 Indiana Hoosier football team. Now they may win other championships, they may not. They may win a bunch of games. They'll probably still win a bunch of games even if they don't win a championship. But nothing is ever going to feel like the first time you watch a team that you never expected win a championship. And that's a big lesson for me. It goes from weird, you go from feeling the weirdness to embracing the weirdness. And that's like been the whole journey of the season for me, thinking about how much I was weirded out by the fact that they beat Illinois 63 to whatever, to just watching them, dominate to a close championship game. It's just learning to embrace the weirdness, the things you never saw coming. And that's what I'm always going to remember about this team is that it came out of nowhere and it was beautiful. And I had to learn and I had to teach myself to like embrace it. And I am.
I think you're really going to respect where I'm coming from on this one because, unlike you, I didn't grow up an Indiana fan. But, like you and I both went to college together. We both went to IU Southeast, and we both have a degree from IU. And so ever since getting my degree, it's always been a thing for me. Like, I want my alma mater to do good,
Mm-hmm.
but I also didn't grow up a fan. So when you mentioned, feeling like a bandwagoner, I kind of relate to that because now that Indiana's good, it's like I have a lot to say about Indiana football. And it's like, in ways I've never talked about Indiana football before, partially because they were one of the worst teams in, the power conferences,
Right.
or the fact that I never grew up a fan. But I have to say, this was such a joy to watch history being made in real time. I mean, this is one of, if not the greatest sports stories in history to go from one of the worst teams historically and hiring the right coach, bringing in the right players. And within 2 years, you're now national champs. And to be honest, I don't see it stopping here. I see Indiana going on to be like a dynasty-like team, being that next powerhouse under Coach Signetti, or as my favorite rapper, Wheezy F Baby likes to call him, Big Netty. Hence the name that me and Matt are both dropping on the show. But no, like when you said bandwagon, it was relatable to me because like I get asked all the time, it's like, why aren't you a bigger Indiana fan? Because you went to IU Southeast, you have that IU degree, And it's like I don't feel right. It's like I think two reasons. One, because we didn't go to campus on Bloomington. I
Okay.
think that would have made a little bit of a difference.
Oh yeah.
And number two is that I didn't grow up a fan, so now that they're good all of a sudden, it doesn't feel right, talking about them as much. But nonetheless, I am still super proud of the school that I have my degree from, and I am very and just watching them, it was such a joy. And just for the game itself, I think what's so amazing is that when we talked about the preview of this game, almost everything we said about what was going to be the key to both teams actually came true. When I talked about Miami and Indiana having to defend Miami, Miami's got a lot of athletic playmakers that if they get in space, they can make those big plays. They got to limit that. And Miami had the plays,
Hmm.
but Indiana was able to get enough stops to where they would ultimately win. I said Indiana had to execute their RPO offense, and they did. And I want to give Ryan, he wasn't able to be on the show today, a lot of credit because one of the bigger player matchups that he pointed out was a big matchup throughout the game. And that was the job that D'Angelo Pons did on whichever receiver he was guarding. So I want to give Ryan a shout out because that was a phenomenal take, and he ended up being, on the money with that.
Yeah.
But it's like there are so many games that you could probably agree with, as a sports fan, is that you make a take before the game and you're thinking, damn. And then like you make a take before the game and you're thinking, damn, like once the game happens, I don't know shit about sports. But then like, but this championship was not one of those because I feel like everything that we've talked about on the show that Indiana is good at, their grit, they're they don't beat themselves. They're technically savvy, showing up in the clutch moments, physical play on both sides of the ball. Miami, explosiveness, getting Malachi Tony in space, getting Mark Fletcher in space. And also the downside of that is that both of the weaknesses for both teams showed up. And it's like this was one of those games, I think, the one game this year that I look at and thinking, you know what? This was the game that made me feel like I knew the most about sports this year. Because everything
Yeah.
that we say about both teams was came into fruition for this game. So just as a sports fan, that was cool to say.
I
But
can
also,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah. But also like it's also a treat being a college football fan because this was such a good game. It really
It
was.
really was. Yeah.
And I want to talk about, Matt, from what I'm gathering what you said, it doesn't ever seem like there was a moment until the clock hit zero or until Sharp made that interception that it felt like Indiana was going to win the national championship. But for me, I had a little bit of a different opinion. Because, towards the end, it was back and forth, and both teams were making plays when it counted. But on Miami's last drive, when Coach Signetti called his final timeout, I had
Yeah.
a gut feeling. It was like, okay, something's about to happen. And it did. And ironically enough, did I hear the story correctly? Sharp, the player that made the interception, he's related to the
Yeah.
Miami corner who got that infamous pass interference call against Ohio State.
Yes. Yeah. It's true.
Still one of the worst calls in NCAA football history. But just the irony and the how this all came full circle is just adds to the already
Yeah.
depths of this lore that we're getting with this Indiana team. But no, when Coach Signetti called that last time out, I just had a gut feeling. It's like, okay, something's about to happen here, and it did. And then, ironically, what happened, not to shade anybody on this podcast, but the Carson Beck that we all know and love, it showed up in the right moments. It's like he was playing, it's just like, with Carson Beck, that for as many good plays as he makes just the right
Just
amount
a
of bad
few.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was playing great up until the final drive. And it's like, all right, he's due for one. Coach Signetti called that timeout. I was like, oh, here's where Carson Beck that we know and love is gonna come through for us. And of course he throws that interception. And
It's weird.
Indiana is in the history books.
It's weird to think about icing the quarterback, but that's how I interpreted that. Because, like you said, it feels like there's one play every game that Carson Beck kind of wishes he wants back. And it's like, I'm going to ice the quarterback. I'm going to make him think. And sure enough, that's what happened. And like you said, I don't think, if people keep talking about when's the movie coming out, I don't think you can make a movie about this team, about that game, because no one would believe it, because every storyline, and I know you guys talked about this in like the previous episode, every storyline just coming together like that, it had better writing than any finale I've ever seen. Like, people from Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, you guys need to be learning how to wrap up your timelines from the script writers of the 2025, 2026 college football playoff,
Hey,
because
hey, now I don't
they
think the
nailed
Stranger
it.
Things ending was that bad.
I know, but people are talking about
Yeah,
it.
people are talking about it. You're
There's
right.
probably a secret championship game where like they're gonna replay it or something. Fernando Mendoza, he's in the upside down or something. I don't know. He's on Jimmy Fallon. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. But yeah, that's just been the wildest thing about this too, is like the media takes, where it's kind of like I don't think people know what to do about it, because it's like it is a very weird thing to cover, because one of the reasons why I said what I said earlier as well about feeling like a bandwagoner is that when in the past and even today, when like a team goes from worst to first, it takes time. There are increments. You know, you start out,
Yep,
you
we're
hire the
not used to seeing it this fast.
yeah. This is like it's like the old analogy that we used last season, where a columnist from Nebraska wrote about Kurt Yeti using a microwave, and Matt Rule was like using a crock pot, and how he thought that Matt Rule's crock pot would outlast Kurt Yeti's microwave. And it's like, nah, the microwave got the meal done, so it's pretty impressive. So it's just so weird, because usually, there are lumps. You hire the coach, you're terrible, you're 3-9. Next year you go 5-7, maybe. Next year you go 7-5, you maybe pull off an upset. Next year maybe 9-3, then you're there. And it's like Indiana's like, nah, we're gonna lose to the two teams that made the national championship game in year one, and then year two we're getting our own national championship. It's just so bizarre. And I think that's why people have such a hard time compartmentalizing it, because it's like you said, this is you can't have when people talk about who's the next Indiana, you can't have another Indiana. There's literally no one historic. Well, until this year, there was literally no one historically worse than Indiana in Division One football. Well, in Division, yeah, FBS football at least FBS. Only Northwest. They only passed Northwestern this year. You can't tell a story where a team who's literally the worst, whose Hall of Fame players all played, I looked this up, Hall of Fame players and coaches outside of like two guys played in the 1910s, and they're not even memorable ones, and 20s, who are the losingest program ever. And then in 2 years, they're the national champion. And I think that's part of why it's hard to cover. There were no bumps. It was just, here we are. We've recruited the right guys, we've done this, we've done that, now we're champions. And I think that's part of why it's a whirlwind. You can't compartmentalize it. It doesn't make any sense logically. It doesn't make any sense narratively. It's just what happened. It's one of those cases where the truth is almost stranger than fiction because of it.
And it's funny because we talk about all the things that go on in the offseason on this podcast, being the college offseason podcast. But one of the things that we've talked about ad nauseum on the show is how the transfer portal and all these other, NIL has made it accessible for these teams to be able to build, championship caliber teams quicker. But even then, like just with where Indiana was at before Kurt Signetti was hired, even now it still feels like this happens like boom, it's here.
Yeah,
They're national championships. And so like I totally am on board with what you're saying. Because even now it's like even with all the things that are accessible that weren't accessible 10 years ago. Because the saying used to be like if you hired the wrong coach, you're putting your program a decade behind. Well, those days are over. I
yes.
mean, you can literally turn around in year one. But even still, to go from one of the losingest programs in college football history to winning a national championship in 2 years, even for everything that we have now accessible, that still just seems so fast. And it's just hard to process right now.
Yeah, it really is. And there are going to be teams, obviously, and we'll get into this probably a little bit later, who are going to try and emulate the model. And it's going to be interesting to see how close those teams get. If this truly is a Kurt Yeti thing, if this truly is not a symptom, one of the things that's going to make the new era of college football the new era is going to be like every other year you've got a team coming in that no one expects, that ends up making the playoff because of good coaching and good personnel decisions, or if it really is just what they say about Kurt Signetti, and he is a psycho. That's just what he does. I mean, and that's the other interesting thing too. You very rarely see a guy who comes in. I mean, even I made fun of it, where it's like making the Big Ten championship game year one, winning the championship. I win. Google me. It's trash talk, but it's not the. It's almost like a joking trash talk because you're still Indiana. You're still in Indiana. You could say these things to try to rile up the crowd, but at the end of the day, you're still in Indiana. So it almost seems like, oh, isn't that cute? And then he does it, and people still like him. It's not like he's voracious, like braggart or anything like that. It's just weird and weirdly incredible how he pulls that off, going from like saying like these bold statements that we kind of just go like, "Oh, he's just hyping the team. Isn't that cute?" To, "Oh crap, that was a threat. He meant that."
That wasn't a
And
threat. That was a promise.
that was a promise. That was, and it's thinking about that too. A lot of coaches say things that they just to amp the team up, get the fan base. But coming in saying, "Oh, Purdue sucks," but so do Ohio State and Michigan, and then you beat those teams, you snap a 30-year losing streak to one. It's just wild stuff. I mean, like I said, you can't. If you wrote this on a narrative and tried to sell it like as Hoosiers, it's even more unbelievable than Hoosiers. No one would buy this script at all.
Well, no one who listens to this podcast is surprised by that answer because we all know Matt McClellan does not like the movie Hoosiers.
I do not. I like the acting, but come on, people. We all know what's going to happen in that movie. It's predictable, and the score is very annoying. How many synthesizers do we need on this planet? Not that many.
I still think Jimmy Chitwood's gonna miss, but hey,
The better story would have been Muncie Central, damn it. They were an integrated team.
fair enough. Fair enough. No disagreement. But as we talk about just how great of a game this was too, on top of everything else, I have a serious question to ask you.
Yeah.
Where do you rate this game all time when it comes to championship games? And I'm going to be completely honest, before you answer that, I can't put it ahead of the 2006 Rose Bowl. Sorry, that game is just too near and dear to my heart that I cannot. That is the game that made me fall in love with football. But
No, I
outside of that,
understand that. I understand that. That was a great game.
I would say outside of that game, where do you think this championship game ranks all time?
It's got to be up there. I mean, it may be just behind that 2006 championship game. Because, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of games that had like a moment, like where like Mendoza's run on 4th and 5 to score, or that came down to like a last second interception with 44 seconds left or something.
We could go with Florida State and Auburn, the Jameis
That
Winston.
was a good one. I couldn't remember that one, what happened there. But that was a good one. But it seems like, especially lately, the one I always go back to is remember the Georgia TCU game. Wasn't that great? That was a fun game to watch. Yeah.
Dude, that me and my buddies were talking before that game, and literally just watching TCU throughout the season and just knowing their defensive formations, like this is a bad matchup. No, like we know this game is going to be over early. I didn't even stay up and watch that game. Like I turned that game off at halftime.
I
It's like,
get,
and
yeah,
we
I
knew it was going to happen because
first quarter.
what did they run? They ran what, like a 3-3-5
Mm-hmm.
defense. And it's like, oh my gosh, you look at that, the physicality of that Georgia offensive line. They're just going to be able to move those guys out of the way. They're going to be able to run wherever they want, and they're just going to have their way with them. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, they scored 65. It was 65-7. One of the
Yeah.
worst championship games we'll ever see. So, I mean, above anything else, this game was definitely better than that one.
Oh, it was that because I'm trying to think like, last year Ohio State and Notre Dame played a good one, but it wasn't like an instant classic we're gonna tell our kids about. The same thing with Michigan and Washington 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
last year was like Ohio State jumped out to a lead. Notre Dame kind of made it interesting late, but then Ohio State scored again. And it's like, it's
Yeah.
over.
When that game was over, you knew. You weren't ever sure about that game until the second kneel down from Mendoza. So I'm gonna put it up there. I think it's up there with that Florida State Auburn game. That was I forgot about how good that one was. I'm trying to replay it in my head, but yeah, that was definitely one at least of the last like 6 years, probably the best championship game for sure, and one of the best of all time, probably up there top five. I'm trying to think if there's anything good that I'm missing. But I mean, LSU beat Clemson pretty easily. Like I said, there really wasn't anything memorable in the Ohio State or Michigan wins. There was 65-7 or 65-7 or whatever. I can't think of anything that really
Ooh,
stands out.
Alabama, Georgia when Tua subbed in.
Okay, I forgot about that one. I got to
That
be honest.
was yeah, that was a good one too.
That one had a good moment. But even that switching to quarterbacks, that run is going to be immortalized in a statue, like in Bloomington and in every man cave in the state of Indiana.
I
So,
think whoever makes the statue needs to highlight the bruises that were on Fernando Mendoza's
ooh,
arm.
yes, they do. They really do because I mean that shows just how. And this is what I'm gonna. This is where I kind of switch gears, but but I'd like to. That's just how good Miami was, man. I thought this was a. I'm gonna be honest. The people, like I said the last time I was on, the people who thought that game was gonna be a blowout were absolutely delusional. I'm gonna be honest because I mean Miami was not gonna go down. I thought it was a horrible matchup for Indiana. I thought this was gonna be like a more motivated Penn State game, and I was right. But they got better. But Indiana got better too. But if Chris Ballard wants to like throw away the rest of the draft and trade into the top like four or whatever to get Ruben Bain, I'm okay with that.
I'm really glad you said that because as much of, as many great plays we saw in that championship game, I do have to say that Ruben Bain was the most pro-ready player on that field.
Like
As great as Mendoza looked, as great as some of the other, as great as Charlie Becker plays that he made late, Ruben Bain was the most pro-ready player on that field. I mean, he rushed with power, he rushed with speed, he rushed with technique. This was an IU offensive line that was playing as good as anybody in the country during the latter half of the season. And yet, no one on that line had an answer for him. The only thing Indiana could do, they just got the ball out quick. But the
yep,
second Mendoza held the ball for longer than a second, Bain was in his face. I mean, this guy has superstar written all over him. He is the next great NFL pass rusher. And coming out of the U, of all places, that has made quite a few studs on the defensive side of the ball at the pro level.
he's going to continue the trend.
He is definitely going to continue the trend.
And I mean that the U. I mean they have some really good players. I mean I wasn't so. I mean they were preseason number 10, and then they kind of have those two weird fluke losses, a couple of close games. But I think we all knew that like they were much better than a number 10 ranking would give them. That's just what happens when you're playing college football. You take a couple lumps, but yeah, Ruben Bain of all those guys, and that Miami defense is incredible. I enjoyed watching them play, even when they except when they played Indiana. I did not like it when they played Indiana, but every other game I watched that involved Miami, that defense is just so much fun to watch. And Ruben Bain has a motor and some tenacity to him that is going to make, unfortunately, some NFL team that I don't root for very happy because, like you said, I can't imagine a world where that guy, and I know people are talking about it's a weak draft class. I can't imagine a world where that guy is not defensive rookie of the year next season for the way he plays and the tenacity he attacks with. I think he's going to be an incredible player at the pro level.
You know, Matt, you know it's coming.
I
But
know,
is it? Yeah, but as
but
much
I'm
as we talk, about how good Ruben Bain is going to be at the pro level, I do have to say one takeaway I have. If there is a negative to take away from Indiana, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this one. But as good as Mendoza played in the national championship game, and as good of plays as he made in the national championship game, what's going under the radar is that he also got exposed and showed why he'll be a bust in the NFL. He has the same issue someone like Marcus Mariota had, in that he gets significantly worse when he has to look past his first read. It showed many times against Miami. What would save Mendoza, because I do have hope here, is if he were to fall, but he's not going to, but if he were to fall to a team like the Rams, they're a well-constructed team with an offensive-minded coach, and theoretically, he can sit behind and learn a player like Matt Stafford for a year or so, but again, unfortunately, he
not
won't.
going to happen. No.
He's going to go to the Raiders.
Ugh. But
Ugh is right.
ugh, that franchise. The one good thing he does have with the Raiders is that I don't know how involved he could be, but at least Tom Brady is there, in the building. He could
I'll
help.
throw in. I'll try to be positive. I'll throw in Ashton Genty.
He's got Brock Bowers. It might be okay, but that line's going to get him murdered.
That's what I'm saying.
That
Yeah.
line is not good.
Unless his first option's open on those RPOs, he's cooked.
Yeah, especially with that line. If he thought Miami beating up on Indiana's line was bad, that Raiders line,
It's gonna be horrible.
you just got to pray Brock Bowers down there somewhere and just chuck it.
Just chuck it. Hey, Brock's down there somewhere. Jesus, take the wheel.
But it doesnesn't upset me because
All glory to God.
he's going to throw to a conglomerate of men down the field. But that stuff like that doesn't upset me because I don't think people in Gainesville care that Tim Tebow didn't work out and played baseball. I don't think people in College Station are
No.
mad that Johnny Manziel was a bust. I don't think people even in I'm trying to think of I had another example. I don't think even people in Southern California are exactly upset that Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush didn't live up to the hype because they brought home a championship. And those are schools that expect to win. It doesn't matter what Fernando Mendoza does in the NFL because there's going to be a street, a statue, and a street named Mendoza Street, a statue of the guy diving over the goal line, and about 60% of the male population of Indiana in about 20 years will be named Fernando. So it's all good with him, I'm sure. And I mean, like I said, that wasn't even a program that expects to win. What this team has done, what these guys have done, is give such a profile to a thing that didn't exist 2 years ago. It still just doesn't feel real. And the way they've represented things, these guys, whether or not any of them pan out in the draft, they're going to be legends
They're
in
still
Indiana.
immortalized. Yeah.
And they're going to, there's college, at least three of them are probably going to, well, two are going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame, which is something that Indiana very rarely gets. And I think that's the main thing here. It all comes back to it is that this is Indiana. This is a team that no one thinks anything about for 150 years of college football. And then in two, totally rewrites the narrative. Finds a guy who seems like an arrogant guy, but is actually like super into film and being weird and drinking beer. It's like Hank Hill times 1,000. A quarterback who's a little dorky, but gets the job done and has leadership skills and toughness. And a bunch of guys from James Madison University who converge at the right moment, the right time, and seemingly lock us in a strange timeline where we have to talk about a team in the Big Ten that's not in Iowa City, not in Oregon, not in Los Angeles, not in Columbus, not in Ann Arbor or Happy Valley, but Bloomington, Indiana. And there's nothing that can overstate how weird that is and how wonderful it is.
What's even weirder, Matt, is all the overreactions that are coming with this. Because now, I know you're hearing them
Oh yeah. Oh,
talking about, is this Indiana team the best team ever? Fernando Mendoza had the best season since insert quarterback. And, obviously, I think you and I both sum it up pretty well
yeah.
because this Indiana team has the best story. And this was one of the most fun teams to watch, one of the most fun teams to follow. They're not better than 2019 LSU, I'm sorry.
No.
There were plenty of quarterbacks that were better than Fernando Mendoza's Heisman season. But again, to Mendoza's credit, he made the plays when they counted. And that's all that matters. And going back to what you said, I don't give two shits that my favorite college player of all time didn't pan out in the NFL either. The only thing that has me upset is that I have a card on the way that I ordered, and it's probably not going to get here because now we got a snowstorm that's about to, take out the whole East Coast.
Well, that's the thing. Indiana won, and hell has to freeze over now, I guess.
That's how it's got to work.
And it's like, and I don't mean, and I know I've talked a lot about Indiana, and that's usually not my MO. I don't like to trash talk. I don't like to brag because I just enjoy watching the games. I'm
Yeah.
not a player. I'm not a coach. I'm just a dude who really likes watching sports. when he's bored and needs something to do.
And a podcast host.
And occasionally do a sports podcast. That's true as well. But I I can't think of anything that's ever made me internally feel as excited lately as this has. And I know you're not supposed to derive all your pleasure from sports or anything like that. Highest to highs, lowest and lows, yada yada. But it's just such a story. And because I hadn't ever had a championship team before, something like that. I mean, I've had division champions, but and I've had a Big Ten championship even in men's basketball for the regular season. But there's something about a team that wins a title, especially a group like this, where you just want to embrace them. Like I said, they're a bunch of dorks, it seems like. They're a bunch of dorks who drink Hoosier beer, talk about the Hoggies, and one of them's nickname is Waffle House. And it's like, it really is like a movie. It's like watching a sitcom. But at the end, instead of like something comedic happens, they come out and they win the championship, and you just love them even more because not only are the personalities right, but they delivered something you thought you'd never see ever. And even though they don't know you, they don't care about your existence, these guys are younger than you in most cases, you just embrace them. And I think what I and a lot of people who like went to IU and trying to figure out Indiana football learned is that's what college football's about. It's kind of like you get it now. You're like the Danny DeVito meme. I get it now. It's like
Or in recent lore, Lethal Shooter. I understand it now.
exactly. That's just it. You have an epiphany that this is what it can be. And like I said, next year they could go 9-3, 8-4. I don't give a flying hell because
They
I've
still
learned
got that natty.
you still got the national championship, still got a team to embrace, still got a coach to embrace. It's kind of like you get it. You just get it. It
Yeah.
connects.
Before we run out of time, as always, like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel to get the latest updates we have on new content coming out. Also, be sure to follow our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. It's at Less is More Sports. Also, be sure to follow the side quest on TikTok. That's at BeansDad018. I guess with the last minute, we got to talk about Miami. Because where do they go from here? Because, Ruben Bain's going to go pro. Carson Beck is finally out of eligibility.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to sum it up short, sweet, and to the point. I feel like it's going to be a lot like the Cam Ward year. They're going to have a great offense. They got Jackson Cantwell coming in. He's going to help that offensive line a lot. Unfortunately, for my sake, they're getting Darian Minza and Cooper Barkate. Don't like that, as a Duke fan,
Right.
but they are going to have a great offense. But just having to replace a stud on defense like Ruben Bain, I think is going to be tough.
I think they got a good pickup today in that guy from Missouri. And I
Hmm.
would be really shocked if they didn't win the ACC next year. So, positive note, Miami fans. Miami, Ohio, you're 19-0 too. Be happy.